Today we're going to be looking at a 9mm conversion upper for your standard AR-15 lower. Now, there have been a couple of different iterations by different companies making them, and this is the first one I really got to get my hands on and try. Now, the reason why I was specifically looking at this one is from a company called Stern Defense, is that it's literally the change of a magwell and an upper, and you have a completely different rifle. So instead of having maybe a dedicated AR-15 that would be 9mm and another rifle that would be 223 or 556, you could have the same registered lower, so one lower that's one serial number, and just convert the upper and magwell to now have a different system. And the best part is that these are able to be bought as kits straight from Stern Defense. If you guys remember, I made a video from Stern Defense where I was speaking about their detachable buttstock, which is, in my opinion, one of the coolest innovations, especially when it comes to people living in restricted states for your AR-15. It's pretty much a simple device that's able to have you remove the buffer tube from your rifle, and it's not a collapsible stock, it's not a folding stock, it is a detachable stock. So being able to have that is kind of like a really awesome loophole when it comes to you being able to store your firearm and still be able to have it in a shorter configuration. So I was really excited to see what else they had to come up with. So we're going to be taking a look at this upper from them directly, and we're going to start from the top and go back through the upper, and then we'll speak about the lower conversion separately. So starting from the top is their muzzle device. This is their HB-C9 muzzle device, and what it is that it's kind of like a forward mitigating device. So it's not going to provide you with any compensation. It's not going to provide you with a reduced muzzle flash, but what it does, especially if you're going to be at an indoor range, it sends kind of all the gases and all the light and everything forward. So the value to that is that if you're shooting around people, or if you're shooting in the dirt and you're going to be doing shots like close towards the ground, all the dust and debris that usually could fly up when you're using a muzzle device like a muzzle brake, instead of it going to the side and getting into your face, it sends everything forward, which makes it much cleaner for you as the shooter to be able to use. It's also nicer because muzzle brakes often could be extremely loud and could be kind of irritating to the person to your right and left. So this kind of just sends everything forward. Now, the only downside really to that, which is just a preference thing, is that it will make the recoil a little bit more stout than if you used a muzzle brake, because a muzzle brake is designed to make it more like a reduced recoil. But again, that's something you could choose from their website based on what you want. So you could get the barrel just as the barrel and put your own muzzle device on it. Remember that this is 9mm, so you have to make sure to buy the appropriate muzzle device for it, so it's going to be compatible. But for this one, it was cool to be able to have just kind of the forward mitigating device, and it made it a little bit simpler for me to be able to use. Now, this barrel is actually a 10.5-inch barrel, so you're going from maybe your standard 4-inch barrel in your Glock to a 10.5-inch barrel, so it definitely adds velocity, and you could get more distance and more accuracy out of it. And from when I was shooting at the range, it was definitely a lot of fun, and it was just a really cool thing to be able to bring and have people shoot. Now, this might be a question that people will bring up, is why in the world would you want a 10.5-inch 9mm? So for me personally, if I'm training people to use an AR-15 for the first time, that recoil, or the kind of the expectancy of what an AR-15 could be very daunting for them and very scary for them. So when I hand them a 9mm one, the recoil is much more reduced. It's much more casual to be able to shoot. It's also much less loud. So for them just getting into the world of firearms, I think it's a very good thing to have, as well as also for you, if you're someone who shoots 223 a lot, it could get pretty pricey. Versus shooting 9mm, you could still be using the same optic and the same setup. So I can just put whatever optic I want, like my regular AR-15, and run it and train with it while not getting the same amount of cost. Now, obviously, you won't get the same style of recoil and all those details, but in regards to just trying to save a bunch of money, it might be a very good option to be able to look at. So going back from the barrel on top is the 12-inch rail. There's going to be a few different locations where you're able to actually mount optics, lights, and lasers, depending on what you want to be able to do. It has a full-length rail on the top of the rifle, and something which some rifles don't come with, which is just a preference for me and irritates me when it doesn't, is there's QD slots, 2 on the front and 2 on the rear, that will allow you to mount your sling directly, so you don't need to buy an additional part to be able to mount it to the rail. It comes integrated into the rail itself, which makes it a very nice thing to be able to have. Now, something this rail also had, which was very impressive, and it's something that I've shown on one of my previous rifles, my personal favorite rifle, is that these actually have anti-rotation tabs. So what that means is that when the rail is actually attached to the forged upper receiver, it's able to be put in a way that even if something were to knock the rail or something, or if the screws would perhaps get loose, it's able to keep it in place through very, very small dimensions. So even if you have a laser or something like that, it won't rotate it out of the way, and then you could lose zero. So if you wanted to kind of run this as like a night vision build and you want to put a laser on it of some kind, then you could have a little bit more confidence in it being stable and secure because of those anti-rotation tabs. So that's something I noticed that's actually very nice to be able to have on an upper. Going back from there, this particular one that they sent out to me is their nickel boron bolt carrier group. So having that coating on the actual bolt bolt is able to help it cycle and run a lot more smooth. So it's very nice to be able to rack. So once you get it from like out of the box, I would definitely recommend lubricating the inside. Just like your regular AR-15, it doesn't need to be lubricated. So we lubricate the inside, but it does run very slick, and it was actually really nice to be able to run. They do have other coatings and styles as well if you have a preference. And then it does also come obviously with the dust cover and a forward assist on this style. Now, something else that's also really great is that it's kind of giving you a lot of like upgraded parts from the get-go. This charging handle is an oversized charging handle, so being able to rack it is much simpler. It's also just on one side, so if you're running this for competition, it's very, very wide. This also could be very valuable for like home defense. If you want just to be able to have like oversized parts to be able to use it, and you want to run 9mm, this could definitely be something that would work. So having that oversized tab to be able to rack the gun is really, really nice as it comes from the factory. Again, they could have just put a standard mil-spec charging handle, but from the factory, it comes with that, which I think is actually really nice. So that's kind of an overview of the upper. Let's go check out how simple it is to install the lower. So the way the lower works is that there's this block that's able to fit into the magwell, and it's extremely simple to be able to install. All you need to do is you take that block that comes in from the box, you put it into the magwell, and then you depress the magazine release, and it will lock it in place. After that, if you wanted to, you're able to have this screw on the bottom over here that tightens it all down, and that's literally it. So you're just replacing the upper, which we all know how to replace the upper. You just pop these two pins, take off the upper, put this upper on, insert this, and now you are literally ready to go. Now, there's only one potential downside you might have to having the system where it's inside the magwell, is that because it's using the magazine release as the point to be able to lock it in, the magazine release for the Glock magazine is actually going to be on the bottom. So there's a tab right over there that you push, and when you push that, it drops the magazine out. So it's something that's kind of like a training habit you have to get used to. But other than that, it actually functions really nicely. The magazines I was using was my standard Glock 19 magazines. This magazine is the one that I made a video on. It's using the Strike Industries base plate. So being able to load it into the gun, it actually drops out much smoother because there's that additional weight, and it comes out really nicely. So it's still, again, it's still not going to be an AR-15. You're not using AR-15 magazines. So there's small learning curves you have to get used to. But after shooting it for a little bit, you're able to pick it up fairly quickly. Insert into the gun, and again, all the other components of the actual gun function. There's only one thing I ran into as an issue, which it might be a break-in thing, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm going to keep trying it out, is that when I wanted the gun to be clear, so I'm going to load this up right now. So I'll load it up. So right now it's chambered. Right now there's a dummy round inside the gun, so it's not actually dangerous. If I were to lock it back, so I want to make it clear, I'll drop the magazine so we know there's nothing left in the magazine. And if I'm going to lock the bolt back, again, all your regular parts work with the system. So I'm going to lock it back. What you might see is that the round is actually stuck in the chamber. It's stuck to the face of the bolt. And unless you rack it really aggressively, so if I rack it really aggressively, it did actually release. But when it came to slowly holding it back to be able to keep it open, so if you wanted to just clear it around, then you kind of have to rack it as opposed to slowly bringing it back and locking it in place, because in that case, I saw that the round would stick. So I'm going to check with them to see if there's something I'm potentially doing wrong there, or maybe it's something that's just in the break-in habit of the gun. But other than that, this gun functioned really nicely. It's very accurate. It was very fun to shoot, especially for new shooters. It's something they could shoot faster and just get used to the feeling of holding an AR-15 before transitioning into a standard 223 or 5.56 caliber. And again, for someone who might want this for home defense, it's again, preference. I know some people would be very upset at the fact of using 9mm instead of a 223 or 5.56 for indoor use. There's a whole debate going back and forth of the pros and cons of each. If you're someone who's looking to try to get a 9mm conversion carbine, then this is probably the most affordable way to be able to get into it, because all you're getting is a complete upper and a mag conversion, and you're able to use a rifle that you already have. Again, this doesn't require a serial number, so you don't need to go through the paperwork again. You could have this shipped directly to your door. You'll take your standard AR-15, just make the conversion of the upper and inserting that into the magwell, and you're pretty much good to go. So it's very simple. I think it's very cool. If you have any questions on this, if you'd like to see me test this in any cool configuration, please feel free to leave a comment in the comment section below, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. This is Raziel Cohen with ndftraining.com. Thank you for watching.